So, 1,000 subscribers. That's a lot. I actually had no idea when we started this channel back in March of 2020 that we'd even get to this point, right? Who wants to hear somebody blather on about the goings-on at Genetec? I certainly didn't. When I started the channel back in March, it was more just to kind of stay relevant with the whole coronavirus thing and all the shutdowns and lockdowns going into effect. As a regional sales manager back then, the thought was, how do I stay relevant for my customers? Who knew I'd have this sort of impact globally? Really, a lot of the comments that I've received are from all over the world, and it is truly a humbling thing to know that I am helping protect different people and different organizations all throughout the globe. Now, that being said, the reason I know that is because folks are leaving comments down below. I certainly encourage you to do the same. And I've attempted to do a good job of answering those questions, but some of those questions are actually, I think, would be beneficial for everybody from our little community here to listen to and sort of hear what I think my expert opinion would give for an answer. So in this episode, I'm going to do basically a Q&A. I'm going to sift through some of the better questions that were left on the comments on those individual videos. I'll leave links to those videos that are referenced as well, and I'll do my best to answer them for you here. So let's dive in. Okay, so first question is from Johnny Dallas, and this was left on my episode called Access Control Best Practices in 2020 featuring HID Global. Again, link up here, link down below. This video, this was sort of an experiment. Honestly, I wanted to do this really long form interview and then chop up the different segments, which is what I eventually did. But this one got way more views than I thought it ever would. It's actually one of my best viewed episodes. Again, link down below if you want to watch it. I don't think the best practices for 2020 or in 2021 have changed all that much since 2020. Maybe I'll do another episode to update that one. Let me know if that's something that you guys would watch. Leave a comment down below. But Johnny's question was, I'm new to access control and I want to learn more. So not really a question, but that raised an interesting concept. It's like, where do you go in the security industry to learn more about access control, right? If you're a new technician starting out in the world and you want to become an access control expert, what school do you go to? Where do you go to get the information? And the sad reality is there is no one specific place. If and I get this question quite often, and when I do, my answer is usually go to a trade school and learn about electronics, specifically low voltage. If you can understand how to wire up a relay, if you understand how electricity flows through a system, right, from a device to an endpoint, you'll know access control. Then it just becomes software. Right? So if you want to learn Genetec software, we have an amazing training department where you can get certified on Genetec Synergist. I'll leave a link down below to the Genetec training page if you're interested in learning more, becoming certified on Genetec Synergist. But the same is true for all the other brands as well. Each one offers its own certification. And really that's for you, once you understand how the electronic components all work together, that's when you go and you get certified on a particular piece of software. And I will also say, like, if you want to make yourself really valuable in the security industry, if you want to be a really high valued technician, you want to get certified in a couple of different products. We'd all like you to just get certified in Genetec, but if you want to make the most out of your career, get certified on the big ones. So here's another comment from a similar video. So this is one of those ones that I chopped up from the access control best practices, which was the what is OSDP and why is WEGAND format so bad and why we should let it die. And I still say let it die. Frank had an interesting comment. Again, not really a question, but I thought this was worthy of conversation. He says, well, keypads and card readers became successful because they're a better alternative to mechanical locks and keys handed out to all that are allowed access. True. And today, we still use plenty of mechanical locks and keys. Also true. And not every facility needs the level of protection like the Pentagon or a nuclear plant. Okay, and then there is John, who needs to install it all. There's your 63% of guys still using WEGAND stuff. So I think what Frank is talking about is the question that was posed in that part of the conversation, which is like, why are people still using WEGAND, and why is it still so prevalent when there's this amazing standard called OSDP? I'll leave a link down below if you want to do more research on OSDP in general. But you have this new standard that is way more secure than WEGAND, but its adoption rate is quite low. So like, it's like, what the heck, guys? And I think what Frank is trying to make the point is, like, not everybody needs super high level security. Proximity cards are just fine as compared to a brass key, and not every facility is the Pentagon. So, why have to install a higher standard for, what could just be like an office supply closet? Here's my answer to that. And I don't necessarily disagree, right? So a proximity card is obviously much better than a brass key, but not by that much. I was actually just in a mall the other day, and they have one of these kiosks that will literally copy a proximity card. So in theory, I could find a proximity card laying in the street, pick it up, copy it, and now I have unfettered access to your facility. That's not going to help me OSDP or not, but the point of that part of the conversation is there are better standards than just simple procs, whether it's iClass, CIOS, MyFair, DesFire. There are so many other secure card formats that we should be burying procs at the same time that we're burying WEGAND. But the same reason why people still use WEGAND is the same reason people still use procs. It's not because Johnny, the technician, doesn't know. It's that Johnny's salespeople follow the path of least resistance. And this may not be a popular sentiment in the security industry, but the bottom line is, as a salesperson, which I am, by the way, my day job is a salesperson, it's your job to inform your customer of the decisions that they're making and the impact that those decisions have on their security posture. Maybe I'll take my Genetec hat off for a second and put my PSP hat on. Securing your door, right, with an inferior credential or an inferior communication standard is sort of an oxymoron, right? You're attempting to protect your facility by putting a lock on it that only certain people have access to, but you're using the least secure format to do that. It would be the equivalent of saying, I'm going to put all of my personally identifiable information on my iPhone and not put a password on, or have my password be 1234 or 0000, like something super insecure. So yeah, you did the right thing by moving some critical information to a protected device, but the device that you use to protect it, you only protected with a 4-digit PIN that anybody could guess. So the point is not that everybody needs nuclear power plant level sophistication, but the technologies are there. OSDP is no more difficult to wire than WEGAND. So why don't we just do it by default? A HID CIOS credential or a MyFair DesFire credential is no more expensive than a proximity card. So why would you still use it? This is like one of my biggest pet peeves. It really should never be done. But you have a lot of folks in the security industry. Again, I blame sales folks to some extent because ultimately it's our job to educate the end user. The end user doesn't know about WEGAND and OSDP and procs versus CIOS. They're relying on you. So if you don't educate them and you just take the path of least resistance and say, well, I know what the part number for a prox card is, and I know what the ordering process is, and I know my technicians know what WEGAND is, so I'll just put this in because it's the easiest thing to do, so I could just make a cookie cutter and move on. You are doing your customers a disservice. I'll get off my high horse. But I think that is the real reason why 63% of stuff, like Frank says, is still WEGAND and not OSDP. All right, next question comes via Tim W. from the top 5 not so hidden features in Genetec Security Center video. Link up top, link down below. Tim says, great video. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for sharing. You're welcome. Question, how do you get arrows for visual tracking? The square and oval shapes are pretty ugly. Yeah, I agree. Would love to see other shapes available for visual tracking, especially something that made it a little more obvious as to what those spots are for more novice users. All right, so that's a great point. And let's jump into Security Desk because there are a couple of different ways that you can use it. Unfortunately, there are no arrows, but I've seen other people do some slightly different things. All right, Tim. So again, your question was, how do we get arrows in visual tracking? The shapes are terrible. Well, the bad news is there is no way to get an actual arrow in for visual tracking, but there are some other options with the shapes that might make things a little bit easier. So let's jump into Config Tool and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so here we are in Config Tool. To get to the visual tracking area, you're going to go to Video. You're going to find your camera in the archiver. For today's purposes, let's do it with the Sony Dome. And for those astute observers, you'll see my demo kit is sitting right next to me, so you get a slightly different view. I moved some stuff around down here over the summer, so you know I'm getting used to it, like coming up with like a new look for this. Let me know if you like the demo kit next to me. Leave a comment down below. All right, so where we want to go is Video Analytics. And in Video Analytics, we want to go to Visual Tracking, which is right here. And in visual tracking, so obviously I don't have any visual tracking zones set up just yet. I'm going to create one which will basically, link my Sony Dome camera, which is this one right here, to the Axis door station, which is this one right here. And how I'm going to do that, I guess because the Sony Dome is here and the Axis door station is here, I'm going to put a visual indicator like in this zone down here. So typically, and in previous videos, what you saw me do is just like take a square or a rectangle and just draw a box. What I'm going to do in this instance is, let's get rid of that. And actually, I will, let's do a circle and let's draw a circle shape. Now you'll notice my circle shape is different than in previous videos. In previous videos, it was just one color. And I see a lot of folks do that enable visual tracking, right? They'll just do a general color. What I've done here is I've changed the interior color to red, and then I've created an outline that's roughly 25% in thickness. So if I didn't do this, I just turned the thickness all the way down, then that's what you would get. You would just get this little this box here, and let's assign it to the Axis door station, or actually the front door. And we hit apply, and we could see because I have the opacity at 100%, you can't see through it. I can come over here and obviously make this, I don't know, 50%, somewhere around there. And now when I hit apply, I can see through that box. And it's helpful. It's definitely more helpful than not having it there, but we can make it a little bit more visually appealing. So perhaps instead of black, let's go yellow. And let's make it 25%. There you go. Now we can move this over. Maybe we can resize it, make it a little bit bigger, make it a little bit smaller. Let's put it right there and hit apply. Well, now that's a little bit more visually appealing, right? Maybe people will see this a little bit more than just your standard run-of-the-mill circle. Same is true with the square shape. So if I take the square shape and I put it here, right, and maybe I'll change the color to blue and red, right, and I move this over, I don't know, over here and hit apply. Oh, we have to assign it to something. Let's assign this to, oh, I don't know. Let's do the main entrance camera in Montreal. So now you could see, again, it's another visual indicator. If I jump back over to security desk and select this camera and bring up my feet, again, you've got your visual indicators here. And if I hover over this one, it shows me the access door station. If I hover over this one, it'll show me the main employee entrance in Montreal. Is it an arrow? No, it's not an arrow. Is it a little bit better than just a plain Jane square or plain Jane box? Yeah, I think so. If you standardize on the colors, right? So maybe red are cameras, blue is doors or something like that. Maybe that might be a little bit better of a visual indicator as well. One more bonus tip. Instead of like creating the box and then finding the device that you want to associate with that box, you can come here and pick an entity and just drag it into the field of view, and it'll put the box for you there automatically. Nice little feature, especially if you're having to do a lot of these. It just makes things a little bit easier. It skips a step or two. Great question, Tim, and thanks for that. Next one, again, comes from the Access Control Best Practices in 2020 episode from Pepin von Bülow. I hope I pronounced that correctly. How do you properly identify yourself on an enterprise level using only mobile? So we're talking about mobile credentials here. You will still need visual ID badge to show you belong. Otherwise, you can have people walk around and acting like they belong when really they don't. True. Many times, piggybacking or tailgating into facility if they look like they belong. Yeah, so I guess what he's saying there is if you don't have a badge and you piggyback into a facility, it's much easier to get into the facility if nobody's wearing badges. True. HID mobile credentials have its place, but I don't think it can be used in a large company or multi-tenant building where you need to see the visual of someone's badge around their neck, visually showing you at a glance that they belong. I agree with your premise, but I disagree with the logic. So for those that don't know, HID mobile credentials are credentials that live on your phone. They are any credential that lives on your phone is going to be more secure. And I know you'll leave comments down below. Oh, there's other more secure technologies than a mobile credential. Generally speaking, especially over a proximity card or a physical card that needs to be presented to a reader, the credential that lives on your device is more secure because you traditionally need to open your phone, which also typically requires you to put in a password or show your face or give a fingerprint or something like this. Plus, the communication standards are either Bluetooth or NFC, and those are both encrypted communication standards going from the credential from the phone to the reader. So the mobile credential is, at this point in time, in my view, the most secure card format. But Pepin is correct in that it takes away the visual of the badge. Here's what I'll say to that. You're right. It does. But you should be wearing a badge anyway. This is not an if, then that, or an or conversation. Like either you have a mobile credential or you have a badge. This is an and conversation. You have a mobile credential and a badge. Having a badge is, again, taking off my Genetec hat and putting my PSP hat on. Having a badge is, for all intents and purposes, absolute best practice for any large enterprise. You want to have a visual representation of who I am. Am I just a standard employee? Am I maintenance? Am I staff? Am I a contractor? Am I whatever? Am I a student? Am I faculty? You need that visual indicator so that people know as they come through your facility who everybody is without having to ask, right? And when they find somebody that's walking through their facility without a badge on, or a badge that belongs in a different part of the facility and they know that those people shouldn't have authorized access, they should be stopped or security should be called. But you can have both. You can have a physical badge that is not a secure card credential, right? It's not a credential, it's not a A credential that would be used on an access control system is it's literally just exactly what we're saying it is. It's just a badge. But your credential ought to be on your phone. Why? In an emergency situation, and I deal with this all the time, especially in the enterprise space and large regulated facilities. In an emergency where you have to do a muster, right, where people need to evacuate quickly, get the heck out of the building, there's a fire in the building, there's some threat, there's some adversary in the building, everybody needs to leave and get to a specific checkpoint. You are 100% more likely to leave your badge than you are to leave your phone. In an emergency situation, the first thing and probably the only thing you're grabbing off of your desk is your phone. Well, then wouldn't it follow that your credential should also be on your phone? So if I forgot my badge, I could still credential into the muster point. I can still show proof that I work for the organization. Whereas if I just walk around with a badge that's also my access control credential and I forget that, well, now in that muster situation, I've got a bigger problem because now I need to prove my identity to my muster chief or my muster captain, and they have to trust that I am who I say I am under duress. And that's the biggest part of that statement, right? So you could forget your credential, go to security and request a new credential when all things are normal. But under duress, there's flames shooting out of the building, and we need to know that everybody is accounted for, and those who are not we need to tell the fire or the first responding folks to go run into that building to their last known location. I can't be worried that you are presenting me with unverifiable information, right? And I have to now hope that I'm getting your information and typing it in correctly because other people's lives are now at risk. So yeah, I agree with your premise. You should have a physical badge, but where I disagree is it's not an either or situation where you have to have one or you have to have the other. You can actually have both, and I think that's the most efficient way to do it. Next one comes from Stephen Laurent, trying out my French-Canadian accent there. From the five more not so hidden features, again, link up top, link down below. Any tricks or shortcuts for adding card readers to a map? Yes. Let's jump into Security Desk. From Stephen Laurent, any tricks or shortcuts for adding a card reader to a map? Yes. Couldn't be any easier. You go to your map designer and config tool. Pick your map. We'll pick Scranton office here. Here's an exterior view of the Scranton office. You see I have a reader here already. That's my front door. But really, all I have to do is come over here, do a search. I'm going to do a search for anything that says door. There's my access front door. Here's a door, main floor in Montreal. Click, drag, make it a little bit bigger, put it wherever you want, and maybe it's back here. That's it. You're done. Like, couldn't be any easier. Hit save. There it is. When I come back to Security Desk, and I'll go to my Maps task, I'll select the Scranton map, zoom in, there's my door, click on it, and if there's a camera associated with it, which I think there is, there may not be, the camera's offline. But if there were a camera associated with it, you would see the camera that's associated with this or you would see the video associated with this camera. You also see the iconography is such that it is in real time. So this door is actually opened right now. It is propped open. Whereas this door, which is sitting right next to me, is closed, right? So if I click on this one, the video from it obviously comes up because there's a camera associated with it. If I were to force this door open by pressing this button here, you can kind of hear the beeping that just went on, and you could see I get a door forced open alarm, but you also see the iconography changed here to show a door that is opened. So same thing would happen here. I think this door is just scheduled to be open because it's the main entry door. But the icons are live. So even if it were a camera that was sensing motion, you would see these little green radar blips coming off of it every time motion was was detected, or if it was a PTZ, you would see where the PTZ is pointed and what its actual field of view is. So that is how you add a card reader to a map. Couldn't be any easier. The next one comes from Paige Beck from Top 5 Not So Hidden Features in Genetec Security Center. Paige says, thanks, Phil. You're welcome. Would love to have a video just on threat levels. I am not going to go into Security Desk right now. Stay tuned. Future episode coming out all about threat levels, because that one's going to take a few minutes to talk about. Basically, threat level management is a module that is a really advanced if this then that engine. Think of it as events to action on steroids, where you could say, if access is denied, drop a bookmark on the timeline, right? That's a sample of an event to action. And you can have one event trigger a number of actions in Security Desk, but you have to program them all individually. But what if I wanted one event to have a cascading effect that has actions that impact not just that device, but other devices in the system, i.e. initiating a lockdown or changing access control privileges, things of that nature. That's where threat level management comes in. So we can have one event trigger an unlimited number of actions that span the entire system. We will do a future episode on this, I promise. Stay tuned. When that episode is released, I'll throw a link up top and down below. Okay, Robert Parrott says, love the info on quick search and visual tracking. Awesome. And by the way, those are two of the most highly viewed episodes, and they're two free features, and they're so fundamental. They've been in Security Center for such a long time, and still I find not many people use them. Anyway, I digress. Have done a video on how I can create tabs to group cameras together, or have I done a video on that? I.e., I want to group all of my second floor cameras together, or group a certain wing of the building together. How can I do that? The answer is layouts and saving workspace. I think I did this, but let's jump into Security Desk and I'll show you how one more time. All right, so again, Robert asks, have you done a video on how to create tabs to group cameras together? So yes and no. What he's talking about really is what's called layouts. And a layout is a predetermined view. So as you can see here, I have an area that I've created and I've set up a number of different layouts. And if I double click on one of these, let's say I'm doing a remote demo, and I just want to really quickly switch to that particular view, double click that, and it will bring up that exact view. And as you can see, without really having to do much anything else, everything populates. Or if I wanted the offline layout, I could double click this, and it'll bring me to the offline layout where I have just basically my two cameras and my map. Now, if you wanted multiple tabs, so let's say I wanted one tab with this layout, and then maybe I want to create another monitoring task with my main demo layout, right? And then I wanted to rename these. I can say, all right, for this one, I want to right click and say this is remote demo. It's the problem when you're working with multiple keyboards. And then this one, I'm going to right click and say this is main demo view. And there you go. Now I have my two layouts saved and running in two individual tabs. So you can, now what you could do is you can, once you've determined that this is the exact view that you want, right click up here and hit Save Workspace. What's going to happen now is if I log out, when I log back in, those two tabs are going to automatically populate for me, so I don't have to go through this whole process all over again. All right, so now how do you actually create a layout, or how do you save a layout if you make a change? So I'm going to just come over here, hit my federations. I'm going to pick this Axis UK camera, drag it into the field of view here. All right, so now I want to make this a new layout, perhaps, or I want to save this this layout. Right-click, save. Oh, there it is. Save as layout. Where do you want to save it? What area? I'm going to save it to my main layout area, and I'll call it demo view version 2 and hit save. And there it is, right there. I would highly encourage you to create a separate area for layouts, and really you're going to do that by going over to config tool. You're going to go to area view, and you're just going to add an entity. What's your entity? It's an area. You could change the iconography here, right? So you could see I chose a different type of icon, and just call it layouts, just what I did here. And now every time you save a new layout, you save it and you put it in the layout section. I've seen other folks have, areas and then sub areas in those areas, and in those sub areas have layouts for those sub areas. The sky's the limit. As you know, with Genetec, you could do so much stuff inside a security desk. That's just an option for you to consider. But that is how you save your own custom layouts and workspaces. And finally, last but not least, is Brad. Brad left 2 comments, so I'll include them both here. They were both on the same video. And let's just read them. So Brad says, and thank you, Brad, because you're 100% correct. Phil, please make a simple video and keep it simple and share for basic motion detection setup with an Axis camera or Hanwha camera. The settings options offered in config tool are way too complicated and confusing for getting the motion options to function properly. Archiver sensitivity leads to too touchy. Nighttime settings don't follow the daytime settings either. Why is the motion setting so difficult to function properly? Oh, motion detection. We've been working with our office cameras and one of our customer systems cameras for months with no solid results. We're getting motion events when there's no motion and wasting ton of hard drive space, constant buffering issues, poor video playback, etc., etc. I've been in the CCTV industry from 1993 and have never had this much trouble getting simple motion detection to function properly. We've tried using the archiver to do the work and also just the cameras to manage motion, but zero success with either option. That was a mouthful. But Brad is correct, and he hits on one of my biggest issues, not with Genetec Security Center, but with video motion detection in general. When video motion detection was first released back in the old multiplexer days and then eventually onto the embedded Linux-based DVRs, it was pretty simple because the amount of pixels that really you needed to be violated was relatively low, because what were we dealing with? 320 by 240 resolution, maybe 480 TV lines of resolution. So it was pretty easy. You had 8 boxes on the screen or 9 boxes on the screen, and if there was motion in one of those boxes, then that triggered motion detection. It was very simple to set up. As you get more and more pixels, right now we're dealing with 5 megapixels, 4K cameras. Hanwha's got an 8K camera that's 30 megapixels now. It's becoming more and more difficult to properly configure motion detection. Couple that with the fact that I find, and again, this is one of my bigger pet peeves, motion detection is never set up correctly. Very rarely. Why? Because it's very time consuming. It's not difficult to do, but you need to dedicate significant time to do it. And going back to the salespeople from the earlier WEGAND conversation, when a salesperson is pricing out a job, they need to do what they need to do to make their company the most competitive as possible. Now, a server has a set cost. A camera has a set cost. Labor has a set cost. But one of those is variable, and that's the labor piece. If I can take out the labor time required to properly configure motion detection, I'm going to do that first to make myself more competitive against somebody else that might be bidding on the same project. So I find that motion detection either is set up improperly. What does improperly mean? On. Turning motion detection on. This is such a pet peeve of mine because now everything is motion. Brad is correct. At the default sensitivity level in Security Center, if the archiver is doing the motion detection, it's too much. You're triggering everything, right? So motion detection on just does nobody any good. Or motion detection is just left off, and now you're basically telling your customer, you're telling the end user, well, You have an incident, go find it. And what does that lead to? It leads to poor customer outcomes, poor end user outcomes. They had an incident at 2 o'clock in the morning, so they found out because they had to go back in time and, scrub through the timeline for 10 hours to find that event. When, had the motion detection been properly configured, they could have seen, oh, I have this little spike of motion at 2 o'clock in the morning. Let me go investigate that. That is not to say that you should ever record based on motion detection. That is 100% an absolute no-no. Hard drive prices and storage prices in 2021 are low enough that you should be able to record 24/7, 365, because again, motion detection is not the answer that you think it is. It is not a perfect science. It is not a perfect technology. It will miss stuff, especially at the edges, at distance, right? You have a tiny object on this giant 4K picture, something's going to get missed, right? And it's usually those tiny objects way far away. There's a way to mitigate that, and that's to crank the sensitivity all the way up, which means you're going to have constant false alarms, which again negates the purpose. So really what you should be doing is record 24/7 continuous with motion events turned on. I'm going to do a whole episode on video motion detection and how to properly configure it because, again, Brad is 100% correct. It can get complicated. There's multiple ways to do it. There's a bunch of different settings that you should be aware of, and we'll get into it more in that episode. But I did want to answer Brad's question here. The next episode that I do will be 100% dedicated to video motion detection. So after about a year of doing these videos, these are some of the questions that kind of rose to the top. If you have questions, if anything that I said sparked a thought in your head and say, hey, but what about this? Or how do you configure that? Leave me a comment down below. I'd love to do more sessions like this. Did you like this video? Leave me a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next one.